I was sitting in my quiet living room when I heard footsteps on the porch. For a moment, my heart leapt the way it used to when my late husband came home from work. But it wasn't him, of course. He's been gone for years now. It was my grandson. I hadn't seen him in months, maybe longer. Life gets busy for young people, I know that. College, work, girlfriends. Who has time for an old woman? Still, when I opened the door and saw his smile, I felt warmth bloom in my chest. "Grandma," he said, pulling me into a hug. His cologne was strong, his arms thinner than I remembered, but I held on tightly anyway. "I thought you'd forgotten about me," I teased, blinking back sudden tears. "Never," he said quickly, leading me back inside. For that moment I believed him. We sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I used to bake him cookies when he was small. I made tea, poured it into the chipped floral cups I've had for decades. He sipped politely, glancing around as if the room had shrunk since his last visit. "Still the same," he said with a little laugh. "Still home," I replied. As we talked, I found myself telling stories. How he used to run through the yard chasing fireflies, how he once built a fort out of blankets in the living room. He chuckled, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. I ignored it. I wanted to believe this was just a visit. His love. Before I go further, let me ask you something, my dear listeners. Where are you listening from today? A small town like mine, or maybe a big city far away? Tell me in the comments, I'd love to know. And if you believe family stories like this matter, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. Because this story is only beginning. We ate dinner together, just stew and bread, but he said it was great, just like always. I felt proud, like a real grandmother again, not just a lonely old woman forgotten in her creaking house. When he asked about my health, I thought maybe he really cared. I told him about my aching knees, about the nights when the house feels too quiet, too heavy. He nodded sympathetically. But then his gaze drifted to the framed photo on the wall. Me and my husband standing proudly in front of this very house the day we bought it. "This place must be hard to manage now," he said casually. I smiled faintly. "It is, but it's my home. Every corner has a memory." He nodded, but there was something in his eyes I couldn't place. Later that evening, as the clock ticked past 9, he set his teacup down and reached into his bag. My heart fluttered. Maybe he had brought me a gift, something thoughtful. But when he pulled out a stack of crisp papers and slid them across the table, my hands froze. "What's this?" I asked. His smile was tight. "Just some forms, Grandma. It'll make things easier for everyone. If you sign here, you won't have to worry about bills or upkeep anymore. I'll take care of everything." I looked down at the papers. Legal documents. Transfers. Signatures. He wasn't here for love. He wasn't here for me. He was here for my house. I sat there in stunned silence, the weight of betrayal heavier than any loneliness I'd ever known. My grandson. The boy I once rocked to sleep, the boy I held through fevers and nightmares. He had come back to me not with love, but with legal papers. For a long moment I just stared at the papers. My kitchen clock ticked louder than usual, each second echoing like a hammer in my chest. "Grandma," my grandson said gently, though his eyes were sharp. "It's just a signature. With me handling things, you won't have to worry anymore." I forced a laugh, hoping it was some kind of joke. "You came all this way, just for this?" His smile didn't waver. "It's for your own good." But I saw it then, the impatience in his tapping fingers, the way he avoided my gaze. This wasn't about me at all. I pushed the papers back across the table. "No," I said firmly. His brows knitted. "No, Grandma, you're old. You shouldn't be dealing with property taxes, repairs, all of that. Let me take care of it." My voice trembled, but I held my ground. This house is all I have left. Every memory, every corner. It's mine. Not yours. For the first time, the warmth left his expression. The boy I once knew, the boy who used to sit on this very floor building castles out of toy blocks, was gone. In his place sat a young man with eyes like steel. "Grandma," he said, lowering his voice, "you don't understand. If you don't sign, things could get complicated. For both of us." The chill that ran down my spine had nothing to do with the drafty window. I stood, gathering the cups from the table with shaking hands. "It's late," I said. "You should go." He didn't move. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, studying me like I was a stranger. Finally, he scooped the papers back into his bag and rose. "Think about it," he said quietly. I'll be back. When the door closed behind him, the silence pressed in like a weight. I sank into my chair, clutching the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. My own grandson. The child I had rocked through fevers, the boy who once called me his best friend. Now he wanted to strip me of the only thing left that tethered me to my past, to my late husband. That night I couldn't sleep. I wandered the house, running my fingers over the worn banister, the family photos on the walls. My husband's laughter echoed in the halls only in memory now. I whispered to his picture on the mantel. What would you say, George? Our grandson, our blood, trying to take what we built. Of course the photo gave no answer. But in the stillness I felt my husband's absence more than ever. The next day I tried to go about my routine. Tea in the morning, tending to the roses in the yard, knitting in the afternoon. But every sound made me jump. Every knock on the door made my heart pound. Would he come back? Would he try again? Neighbors waved from across the street, unaware of the storm brewing in my house. I smiled faintly, hiding the truth. After all, who would believe me? Who would believe that a sweet young grandson could carry such intentions? That evening the phone rang. I answered with a trembling hand. It was him. Grandma. His voice was calm, almost too calm. I hope you're thinking about what we talked about. It'll be better for everyone if you just sign. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I told you no. There was a pause. Then softer, almost chilling. Then maybe I'll have to find another way. The line went dead. I stood there in the fading light, clutching the phone to my chest. My grandson had come to me with love once. But now he carried threats. And though I was old, though my knees ached and my hands trembled, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I would not give up my home. Not to him. Not to anyone. Even if it meant war within my own family. The morning after his phone call, I moved slower than usual. My knees ached, my hands trembled more than they should have. But it wasn't age that made me weak. It was fear. I brewed my tea, staring at the steam curling up like ghosts. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every shadow on the porch made my heart race. I kept hearing his voice in my head. Then maybe I'll have to find another way. By late afternoon he was back. I saw his car first. Newer, shinier than anything I could afford, the kind you don't buy without debt chasing you. He stepped out in a pressed shirt, flashing that same smile he had worn when he was a little boy asking for cookies. Grandma, he said, walking in as if the house were already his. I clutched the arm of my chair. I told you I won't sign. His smile didn't fade. Instead, he set 2 cups of coffee on the table as if we were about to share a pleasant chat. I know you're scared, he said softly. But I'm trying to protect you. You can't keep this house forever. What happens if you fall? What happens if you end up alone here? His words stung because they carried a grain of truth. I was alone. My husband was gone, my children lived far away, and the nights stretched long and empty. But still I whispered, this is my home. I'm not giving it up. He leaned closer, his tone shifting. Grandma, listen. The taxes are overdue. The roof leaks. Repairs cost money. I can take care of all of it, if you just sign. Don't make me the bad guy here. For a moment my heart wavered. He sounded almost convincing, almost kind. But then I looked at his eyes. They were sharp, calculating, nothing like the boy I once knew. You already made yourself the bad guy, I said firmly. Something inside him cracked. His hand slammed the table, the coffee sloshing over the edge. Why do you have to make this so hard? He snapped. I'm offering you security. Don't you understand? I need this. The word hung heavy between us. Need. Not help. Not love. Need. I stared at him, suddenly seeing the truth. You're in trouble, aren't you? This isn't about me at all. His jaw tightened, silence confirming what his words would not. Memories flooded me then. The boy with scraped knees who used to beg me to patch him up. The teenager who borrowed money for gas. The young man who once promised to make me proud. Now here he was, begging again, not for love, not for guidance, but for the roof over my head. My voice broke. What happened to you? He looked away, shame flickering across his face before hardening again. Life happened. You wouldn't understand. When he left that evening, he didn't hug me. He didn't even look back. I locked the door behind him, leaning against it as tears slid down my cheeks. The house was quiet again, but it no longer felt safe. His shadow lingered in every room, his voice echoed in every hallway. That night I pulled out the old family album. I traced his smiling face in the photos, the little boy who once loved me without condition. I whispered to the silence, I don't know if I lost you or if you lost yourself. But either way I knew one thing. If he came back again I had to be ready. And he would come back. Because I had seen the hunger in his eyes. It wasn't just for money. It was for everything I had left. And I wasn't sure how far he'd go to take it. I knew he would come back. Men who hunger for money always do. But I didn't expect him to return so soon. It was only 3 days later when I heard the knock. Firm. Impatient. Not the gentle knock of a grandson visiting his grandmother, but the demand of someone who thought they already owned the place. I opened the door slowly. He wasn't alone. 2 strangers stood behind him. Men in dark jackets, arms crossed, faces blank. My heart sank. Grandma, he said smoothly, can we talk inside? I clutched the doorknob tighter. No. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. His smile flickered. He glanced back at the men, then leaned closer to me. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the papers. I brought witnesses this time. My knees trembled, but I forced myself to stand tall. I will not sign away my home. Not today. Not ever. The men shifted uncomfortably, perhaps unused to bullying an old woman. One muttered something I couldn't catch. My grandson's eyes hardened. Do you want trouble? Because trouble is what comes next if you keep refusing. I thought of my husband then, of how proud he had been when we bought this house, how he planted the first rosebush out front. My husband wasn't here to protect me anymore. But his memory was. This house is built on love, I said quietly. Not greed. And I will die in it before I let you take it. For a moment I saw hesitation in his face. The boy I once knew flickered through just for a heartbeat. But then it was gone, replaced by cold determination. He turned to leave, motioning for the men to follow. Think carefully, Grandma. Next time I won't ask so nicely. As the door shut, my legs gave out. I sank to the floor, clutching the rug, gasping for air. What had happened to him? What had twisted my grandson into this stranger at my door? That night I sat by the window, unable to rest. The house creaked in the wind, but every sound felt like footsteps returning. I kept the phone near me, though I had no one to call. My children lived far away, too busy to understand, and shame kept me from telling neighbors. Who would believe me? Who would believe that the boy I once held in my arms had turned into my tormentor? By morning, I knew I couldn't fight this battle alone. My hands shook as I dialed the number on the card the legal aid officer had given me months ago, back when I first learned to defend myself after George died. When a kind voice answered, I whispered, "My grandson is trying to take my home." The words felt like glass in my throat, but saying them out loud gave me a strange strength. "Bring the documents," the voice replied. "And don't let him corner you again. You still have rights." Rights. I had almost forgotten the word. Later that day, as I gathered the papers he'd left, I noticed something strange. Scribbled notes in the margins, crossed out names, numbers that didn't make sense. It wasn't just my house he was after. There were other properties listed. Other signatures. My hands went cold. Was he doing this to someone else too? I pressed the papers to my chest, staring at the empty chair where he used to sit as a boy, swinging his legs and asking for another cookie. Tears blurred my vision. "What happened to you?" I whispered into the silence. But no answer came, only the echo of my own breaking heart. The papers trembled in my hands as I carried them to the small legal aid office downtown. My legs felt heavy, each step a reminder that I was no longer the strong woman who once chased my grandson through the yard. But I kept moving. I had to. Inside, a young lawyer named Ms. Reynolds greeted me. Her eyes softened when she saw my face. "Please sit. Tell me what's happening." I laid the documents on her desk. My voice cracked. "My grandson, he wants me to sign these. He says it's to help me. But I know better. He brought strangers to my door. He threatened me." She began reading, flipping through the pages with practiced hands. After a long silence, she looked up, her brow furrowed. "Mrs. Parker," she said carefully, "this isn't just about your house. Look here. These notes, these crossed-out names. He's not only targeting you. These are other properties. Other elderly names. He may be involved in something much bigger." My stomach twisted. "You mean, he's tricking other families too?" She nodded grimly. "It looks that way. And if these men he brought are connected, it could be organized. I pressed my trembling hands to my lap. I wanted to scream, to cry, to tear the papers into 1,000 pieces. But instead I whispered, "He was a sweet boy once. I don't understand how he became this." Ms. Reynolds leaned forward, her voice gentle. "Sometimes desperation makes people do terrible things. But you don't deserve to lose everything because of it. We can fight this. But you'll need courage." Courage. I had survived losing my husband. I had survived nights of loneliness so heavy I thought they would crush me. Perhaps I could survive this too. I lifted my chin. "Tell me what I need to do." She explained. "File an injunction, prepare testimony, gather neighbors or anyone who had seen the threats. If this goes to court, we need your story, your voice. And these papers," she tapped the documents, "they're damning." I nodded slowly. "I'll do it. Whatever it takes." On the bus ride home, I stared out the window at the town rolling past. Children on bicycles, mothers pushing strollers, couples holding hands. Life went on for them, untouched by betrayal. But for me, everything felt different. When I stepped off at my stop, I saw his car parked near my house. My chest tightened. He was leaning against the hood, waiting. "Grandma," he called too casually. I held my bag close, keeping my voice steady. "I went to see a lawyer." His face froze for a moment, then twisted into something hard. "Why would you do that? Don't you trust me?" My eyes filled with tears. "I trusted you with my whole heart. And you broke it." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't know what you're doing. These people," he gestured vaguely toward the world beyond us, "they don't care about you. I'm family. I'm the only one who does." I shook my head. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't bring thugs to the door. For a second his expression flickered, shame maybe or guilt. But then it was gone. "You'll regret this," he muttered, climbing back into his car. The tires screeched as he sped away. I stood in the fading light, clutching my bag of papers, my heart pounding. Regret? Oh. I had spent too many years regretting silence, regretting all the words I never said to my husband, regretting the time I lost with my children. But this I would not regret, because I would not let my grandson or anyone else steal the only piece of my life I had left. The following week, Ms. Reynolds began preparing the case. She said it would take time, but the papers my grandson had pushed across my table were enough to start. Still, the waiting was its own torture. Every night I checked the locks twice, sometimes 3 times. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. I had lived alone for years since George died, but I had never felt so unsafe inside my own home. One morning I stepped onto the porch to find an envelope wedged under the door. My heart sank as soon as I saw it. No stamp, no name. Just my trembling hands opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Stop, or you'll lose more than just a house." I dropped it, the words burning into my skin. For a long moment I stood frozen, the chill of fear crawling up my spine. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Jenkins, the neighbor who lived 2 doors down, came by with a pie. She leaned closer, whispering as she set it down. "Your grandson was here yesterday. Asked me to testify you're forgetful, that you're slipping." My chest tightened. "What did you say?" She patted my arm firmly. "I told him I've known you 30 years and you're sharper than me most days. Don't worry, Anna. I won't lie for him." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you. Thank you for standing by me. But fear not at me. If he was trying to buy or bully neighbors, what else would he do?" That evening the phone rang again. His voice was low, steady. "Grandma, you don't want this fight. The people I'm working with, they don't forgive. Just sign and we can end this before it gets worse." I gripped the receiver, fury overtaking fear. "Worse? You're already worse than I ever imagined. You're not my sweet boy anymore. You're a stranger wearing his face." There was silence on the line, then the click of disconnection. The next day Ms. Reynolds called me into her office. "We've filed for an injunction. Until the hearing they can't force anything. But you need to be careful." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "These men he's tied to, they've been investigated before. Property scams. Elderly targets. If we prove it, your testimony could help stop them." I shivered. My grandson wasn't just desperate. He was tangled in something criminal. That night, I sat by the window looking at the roses George had planted so many years ago. Their petals were fragile, but the roots were deep, stubborn. I thought of my child, of the nights rocking him to sleep, and of my grandson as a baby, so small, so innocent. Where had it all gone wrong? George, I whispered to the night, if you can hear me, give me strength. Because our family is tearing itself apart. The next knock at my door wasn't my grandson. It was one of the men in dark jackets. He leaned close, his breath sour. You think a piece of paper will protect you, old woman? Courts move slow. Accidents happen faster. I slammed the door, my knees buckling beneath me. For the first time, I truly wondered if I was in danger of more than just losing a house. But even as fear tried to swallow me, something inside refused to break. I picked up the phone and called Ms. Reynolds. My voice shook, but I said the words anyway. They threatened me again. But I won't stop. If they want to fight, they'll have one. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. If my grandson was part of something that preyed on the old, then I owed it to every grandmother, every widow, every lonely elder in this town to stand up. And I would. Even if it cost me everything. The courthouse smelled faintly of dust and old wood. I hadn't stepped into a courtroom since my husband and I signed the deed to our house decades ago. Back then it was pride that brought me here. Now it was survival. Ms. Reynolds walked beside me, steady and calm. Remember, Anna. Speak the truth. You don't have to embellish. Your story is enough. I nodded, though my heart thudded so loud I could barely hear her. When we entered, he was already there. My grandson. He sat on the other side of the room, flanked by men in dark suits. His hair was slicked back, his clothes sharp, but his eyes, those eyes I once knew so well, were hard and distant. He didn't smile. My chest tightened. How had we gotten here? From bedtime stories and scraped knees, to this cold battlefield of lawyers and glares. The judge called the session to order. Their attorney spoke first, his voice smooth, rehearsed. Your Honor, my clients only wish to provide a safer environment for their grandmother. She is elderly, fragile, incapable of managing finances or property. My client intends to take responsibility so she can live her final years in comfort. His words dripped with false kindness, and every sentence felt like a knife. When it was my turn, Ms. Reynolds rose. Your Honor, she began, this is not about love or safety. This is about greed. We have evidence, documents showing not only attempts to transfer her property, but similar attempts involving other elderly citizens. This is a pattern, not a one-time act. Gasps rippled through the room. I kept my eyes on my folded hands, afraid to look at him. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Parker, do you wish to testify? My knees shook as I stood. I clutched the railing for balance, drawing in a breath. I raised that boy, I said softly. I fed him when he was hungry, held him when he cried, and prayed for him every night. I thought he came to visit me because he loved me. But he didn't. He came with papers. Papers meant to take my home, my life, away from me. My voice trembled, but I pressed on. This house isn't just wood and nails. It's the memory of my husband, the roots of my family, the only thing I have left. If I lose it, I lose myself. And no one, not even my grandson, has the right to take that from me. When I finally sat, silence filled the room. Even the judge seemed to pause before speaking again. Then they called witnesses. Mrs. Jenkins stepped forward, her voice firm. She's not slipping. She's sharp as ever. He asked me to lie about her memory. I refused. Others came too. Neighbors, even a clerk from the store who had overheard heated arguments. Piece by piece, the mask my grandson wore began to crack. I dared to look at him then. His jaw was tight, his eyes darting nervously as testimony piled against him. For the first time, I saw something other than arrogance. I saw fear. When the judge called recess, I stepped outside for air. The courthouse steps felt steep, but the autumn breeze revived me. Suddenly, a voice hissed near my ear. One of the men in the dark suits leaned close. You think you're winning, old woman? This isn't over. We don't lose. He melted back into the crowd before I could answer. I pressed a hand to my chest, forcing calm. They were right about one thing. It wasn't over. But neither was I. That night, as I lay in bed, exhausted but unbroken, I whispered into the dark. I may be old, but I am not weak. And I will not let them take what's mine. The next morning, the courtroom was even more crowded. Word had spread and curious faces filled the benches. Neighbors, townsfolk, even people I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't just my fight anymore. It was a spectacle, a warning, a story unfolding in front of the whole community. My grandson sat across from me, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking nervously from the judge to the crowd. He looked less like a confident young man and more like a cornered boy. The judge called the session back to order. "Ms. Reynolds," he said, "you may continue." My lawyer rose, holding the thick folder of documents. "Your Honor, yesterday we submitted evidence of multiple attempts to coerce Mrs. Parker into signing over her property. Today, we will present records linking these same patterns to other vulnerable seniors in this county." A murmur ran through the room. She handed copies to the court clerk, who distributed them to the judge and opposing counsel. "These aren't isolated," she continued. "There are at least 5 other names here. 5 other elderly citizens approached with nearly identical documents. The handwriting, the formatting, even the notary stamps are the same. And at the center of it all," she paused, her eyes cutting to my grandson, "is the defendant." The opposing lawyer leapt to his feet. "Objection. These are unrelated cases. My client had nothing to do with." But the judge held up a hand. "Overruled. The court will hear this." I dared to look at my grandson then. His face was pale, his fists clenched tight on the table. One by one, witnesses were called. An elderly man with a cane hobbled to the stand. "He came to me too," the man said, pointing a trembling finger. "Said he'd help with my bills if I signed some papers. But when I refused, he stopped visiting altogether." A woman in her 70s wiped tears as she spoke. "He made me feel like family again. And then he asked for my house. I was heartbroken." Each testimony cut deeper than the last. My heart ached not just for myself but for all of them. I wasn't alone. I was just one of many. When the judge asked if I wished to add anything, I stood slowly. My knees shook, but my voice was steady. "This isn't just about property. It's about trust. We gave him love, food, shelter, memories. And he repaid it with betrayal. If the law doesn't stop this, how many more of us will suffer?" For a moment, silence hung heavy. Even the judge seemed moved. Then it was his turn. My grandson rose, straightening his tie. His voice was strained, desperate. "They're lying," he said, gesturing toward the witnesses. "I never forced anyone. I was only trying to help. I love my grandmother. I just wanted what's best for her." But the words rang hollow. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Whispers filled the air. Finally, the judge leaned forward, his voice firm. "Mr. Parker, love does not come with legal documents. Care does not arrive with threats. If these allegations are true, you have not acted as family but as a predator." My grandson's face flushed red. For the first time, his composure broke. He slammed his hands on the table, shouting, "You don't understand. I had no choice." The outburst echoed in the courtroom. Gasps erupted. The mask had fallen, and everyone could see what I had seen all along. The judge banged his gavel. "Order. Order in the court." My grandson sank back into his seat, his chest heaving, sweat beading on his forehead. I closed my eyes, my heart breaking. He wasn't just my grandson anymore. He was a stranger, revealed under the harsh light of truth. That night, back in my quiet house, I sat by the window, the roses swaying in the wind outside. I pressed a hand to the glass and whispered, "George, maybe now they see. Maybe now, finally, they'll believe me." But even as I said it, a chill lingered. Because trials are battles, and battles don't always end with a single blow. And I knew this war wasn't over yet. The final day of the hearing arrived. I hadn't slept the night before. I sat in the dark living room, clutching George's old photo, whispering for strength. When morning light crept through the curtains, I dressed slowly, my hands trembling. This was it. The moment when the court would decide if I still had a home, or if everything George and I built would be lost. The courtroom was silent when the judge entered. My grandson sat hunched at the defendant's table, his tie loosened, his face pale. Gone was the confident young man who had once stood at my door with papers. What remained was someone desperate, cornered, and exposed. Ms. Reynolds stood, her voice steady. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Multiple elderly residents were targeted with fraudulent documents. At the center of these schemes is Mr. Parker. This isn't about care or love. This is about manipulation and greed." She turned to me then, giving me the faintest nod. I managed a small smile back. The defense tried one last time. His lawyer rose, his words polished but hollow. Your Honor, my client is young, misguided. Yes, mistakes were made, but his intentions were never malicious. He wanted to secure stability for his grandmother and himself. The judge's eyes narrowed. Stability does not come through coercion, false documents, or intimidation. That is not care. That is exploitation. When the judge invited me to speak one last time, I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my voice was clear. I never wanted this, I said softly. I wanted a grandson who visited for love, not for property. I wanted laughter in these rooms again, not fear at my door. But when he handed me those papers, I realized he wasn't here for me. He was here to erase me. I swallowed hard, fighting tears. I may be old, but I am not weak. And I will not be erased. The room was silent. Some people wiped their eyes. The judge raised his gavel. His voice rang clear. This court recognizes the fraudulent nature of these documents. Custody of the property remains with Mrs. Anna Parker. Furthermore, an investigation will proceed into associated parties involved in elder exploitation. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel struck. Relief crashed over me like a wave. My knees nearly buckled, but Ms. Reynolds caught my arm. You did it, she whispered. You stood your ground. But across the room, my grandson's eyes met mine. For a moment, the anger faded. I saw the boy he once was, the child I had loved so fiercely. His lips trembled as if he wanted to speak. Then the bailiff led him away. I wanted to run to him, to pull him into my arms and whisper, "It's not too late. You can still come back." But my feet would not move. Because I knew, some lines once crossed cannot be undone. That night I sat in my quiet house once more. The roses outside swayed in the evening breeze. The deed lay safely in my drawer, proof that my home was still mine. But victory felt heavy. I whispered into the silence, "George, we kept the house. But at what cost? I lost our grandson." Tears slid down my cheeks, soaking the blanket in my lap. I had saved my home, yes. But I had lost something far greater. The bond of blood, the love of family. And that wound I knew would never heal. That is where my story ends. I kept my home, but I lost something far more precious. The trust of a grandson I once held so dear. Life often gives us bittersweet endings like this, and I wonder, have you ever faced a moment when family love turned into betrayal? If so, please share your thoughts in the comments. And tell me, where are you listening from today? If this story touched your heart and you want to hear more emotional family dramas like this one, don't forget to subscribe, click like, and turn on the notification bell. That way you'll never miss the next story that might stay with you long after it ends.